both of you. Randy, Alex, thank you so much for joining us. So today we're going to talk a little bit about winter holiday safety. I have a bunch of questions, but I'll let you guys go through your presentation first. So I'm just going to change over to a new presentation here. Just a second.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you everyone for joining us wherever you're joining us from. I'm Randy and joined by Alex. We're going to be co-presenting this presentation on winter holiday safety. We start all our presentations the same way, just talking about our fire department and sort of the area of coverage. We have 43 fire stations with 1,400 frontline firefighters. In 2023, we responded to 92,918 incidents. So really for us, our role as community safety officers is to educate and try to reduce those numbers. Obviously, that's a very high number. We understand that accidents do happen, but many fires and incidents are preventable. And if we can bring down that number, we can keep Calgarians safer, just in terms of making sure we have enough resources to cover when accidents do happen. Yeah, we want to make sure that you're safe in your homes and in your communities. And today we are going to focus on winter holiday safety. Sorry, I'm just pulling this slide up. So 55% of our incidents are critical medical interventions, but 29% are fire and fire related. When we break down what the fire department does, obviously fire response is what we're known for, and is sort of what everyone thinks about when they think about the big red truck. But as mentioned, 55% of our calls are critical medical response. So we help in medical emergencies, we help in water rescue, motor vehicle, any sort of special rescue situation. As I mentioned here, you could see some medical. We also do fire prevention and education. We have a safety codes and inspections and investigations division that makes sure that commercial buildings are safe around Calgary, that building codes are followed, to make sure that when you do go to even a commercial establishment, it's safe for you to go into. So when we talk about fire safety and our safety messaging, we always try and envelop in three key messages, which is prevention, detection, and evacuation. So those three key points working together can keep you safe in your home and your community. When we talk about the most common fire causes in all throughout the year, from 1 to 5, it's been steady for a number of years, from cooking to smoking, electrical, candles, and heating. That's pretty much the consensus, not just in Calgary, but would be that across America. And we get a lot of our numbers from comparing to the National Fire Protection Association, which compiles data from across North America. So it's pretty consistent across, and that's why we focus our fire safety messaging, as you can see, primarily on cooking safety, which we'll talk about today. But when we talk about holiday messaging, if we talk about winter holiday fire statistics, and these are taken from the NFPA, you can see on average, fire departments across North America respond to 790 home structure fires per year caused by decorations. So these are holiday decorations, not necessarily just Christmas, but any type of holiday decorations. 4 fire deaths, 33 fire injuries, and $14 million in property damage. Again, that's not Calgary specific. That's specific in North America, but just to highlight that there is a concern and there is a risk around the holidays. We want to make sure that we keep you safe and aware of some of the risks. When we talk about the most common winter holiday fire causes, it kind of changes up a little bit. You noticed before cooking was number 1, and candle fire safety was a little further down. At this time of year, candles present a higher hazard than cooking. 46% of the incidents caused by candles, and then followed by cooking, and then again, electrical, heating, and smoking. So those top 5 causes are consistent around this time of the year, candles take a little bit of a lead because for a number of holidays, candles are used, whether it's Hanukkah, Christmas. Candles are very prevalent in religious rituals and holiday rituals, and therefore they present a significant hazard. So we'll start with candles, Carrot. You know, as a fire service, our recommendation is to go with battery operated candles as much as you can. I personally enjoy these. I have candles just like this that I put around my house, and I appreciate that they are multicolored as well. Uh, yeah, I go to Costco and I buy mine. So, and again, there is no damage for heat or fire, and you just have to, replace the batteries and make sure those are maintained. So that's always our recommendation. We don't want to see candles in bedrooms. Obviously, in bedrooms, there are many flammable objects from curtains to clothes to books. And often that presents a very significant hazard. And your bedroom should be the safest room in your house, free from any fire hazards. So any considerations with candles is the location. You want to make sure there's adequate space between any lit candles and things that can burn. Again, that distance, the height, are they in the path of a draft that can blow them over and knock them over? You want to make sure that the candles are supervised. So don't leave any open flame unattended, especially candles. Obviously, as they melt down, they become less stable, and depending on the type of holder you use or base, it could present a significant hazard. So just being aware of where you place your candles, what's around them, and making sure they're supervised is best practice. So avoid candles in bedrooms or sleeping areas, as I mentioned. Place them again where they can't easily tipped over or blown over, and away from children and pets, especially pets. The pet might clear the candle, but the tail may not, and sometimes the tail will knock candle over, and that can cause significant damage, and obviously it can be a very dangerous situation. Do have them in well ventilated areas, but again, avoid a direct draft so they can blow over, and place them on a surface that won't easily burn, like a countertop. So we want candles about 1 foot or 12 inches from anything that can burn, or 30 centimeters. So you want to just make sure there's proper clearance around the curtains. Again, being aware that your curtains hanging on a calm day are fine, but if the wind is blowing and the windows are open, it might be a little bit dangerous. You might need more than that 12 inches of clearance. And again, personally, the safe bet would be as far away from the curtains as possible. Seen enough instances where that's been a big cause of fires in people's homes. In fact, in my mom's own home, there was an issue with the curtains. Actually, not it was the cooking, but I just keep thinking the curtains are a significant hazard when it comes to open flame and heating. I might have to talk about the curtains later. We'll see. So use proper and sturdy holders that won't tip over. That's an essential message there. So the holders on the right are quite sturdy. The candle is contained, the flame is within, no damage if tipping. And then you see on the left here, significant melting of the candles. Can't even tell where the holder is there in that picture. Never leave those lit candles unattended. So again, we talk about making sure they're supervised, and always extinguish candles before leaving the room. Also safe practice, children, make sure we keep candles away from children, including matches and lighters. If anyone has any grandchildren that come to visit, kids are very curious. We do a lot of presentations with kids, and we ask them to raise their hands if they're curious about things like dinosaurs and animals at the zoo. They always raise their hands, but they always raise their hands with fire as well. Children are very curious. Our best practice, and we always teach parents to hide matches and lighters and keep candles away from kids. This would be the same situation. Make sure that when you do have visitors over for the holidays, we get rid of the matches and the lighters, and they're not in plain sight, especially for children. Unattended cooking. So we're talking about cooking now. We move from candles to cooking. Unattended cooking is the leading cause of fire. On average, the Calgary Fire Department responds to 2 cooking fires a day. So we'll talk a little bit about some common cooking safety tips that you can employ in your own home. The first of which we talked about children is keeping them 1 meter away from your cooking units, whether it's, you know, your stovetop, your oven, even if you're barbecuing in the winter, we want to keep 1 meter distance, children and pets and their items or toys, right? Because those also present a tripping hazard. We're not just talking about the burns that can be associated, but also the tripping hazards. Uh, yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
just gonna jump in here. Um, now that I have a cat in the home, toys go under the stove. Is that something that you need to be cautious of? Because, a cloth mouse seems rather flammable sitting under my stove.
Yeah, I would remove it. Like if you know it's on the stove, do a check when your oven is not in use to make sure there's nothing underneath. Because yeah, anything that's coming close to something that produces a high amount of heat could present uh, um, uh, fire risk for sure.
Because I know the drawers on the bottom are not for storing things, they're actually warming
Yes.
drawers. So do they actually get very hot?
To tell you the truth, mine doesn't work. So, but I do know that it's a warming drawer. I don't know if there's. I've actually checked on my stove to see if there's an actual button to turn it on, but it doesn't seem to have it. I think it's just stays warm
Warm.
because of the oven when it's on. Like you can transfer things there. But again, you're right. We don't want things stored
Okay.
under there because some people do use that as a storage, and you know again, if I'm sure if you're storing a pot or a baking a dish might not be a bad thing, but some people will store a number of things that could be flammable, and
Right. And
it,
and should we be dusting down there and making sure that nothing's greasy
yeah, no,
in that one?
absolutely. You should
Okay.
always be cleaning, especially the bottom of your oven when it's not in use. Uh, you know, the key is, especially with the oven, and we'll talk about that in a minute, is that you know, obviously when just used it, it's super hot, and then you go eat your food and you let it cool down and you forget about it until the next time. So it's best practice some point in between uses to actually clean the bottom of your oven so that any grease, any spilled food or anything that bubbled over, turkey juice, cheese if you're making pizza, uh, it can trip the smoke alarms the next time you use it, right? Because it'll still have to burn off. So yeah, best practice to clean between uses. I know that's not common for people because they turn it off, they let it cool down, they eat, they do the dishes, they forget about it. And then the next time they preheat the oven, they see smoke all over the place and they're like, oh, I should have cleaned it. And it's kind of a vicious cycle. So yeah, best practice to clean around the area for sure. When we talk about the most dangerous type of fire in the kitchen is grease fires. We want to make sure that you wear an oven mitt and slide a lid or a baking sheet over the fire and then turn off the burner. So just make sure you always have a proper fitting lid when you're cooking and you have your oven mitts nearby, because if you do have a grease fire, again, grease fire that's contained within the pot or the pan is what we're talking about. If it's spilling over and bubbling, we want you to get out and call the fire department. But if it's contained within the pan, just like this, um, use an oven mitt, grab the lid, cover it, and then turn it off.
Baking soda?
No, so baking soda is one that we commonly get as a question, and we feel that anything that would put you over the fire could present a burning risk. So baking soda, in order to get it over top, you would have to pour it, and therefore
So you don't fairy dust it?
no, you don't. Yeah, and that becomes, again, it becomes a time thing, right? If you're trying to fairy dust it, probably take a few attempts. Whereas honestly, just simply using the lid, covering it up and turning the heat off is the best practice. And because once you cover it up, you eliminate the oxygen flowing to the fire, you turn off the heat, you eliminate the heat source, and it'll cool down and extinguish itself on its own. We don't want you to move the pot or pan after you've extinguished the fire. Just let it cool down, give it adequate amount of time. We've seen cases where the handles melt. So as the person's carefully trying to slide it off, once they get it off and gravity does its work, the handle melts and whatever was in spills over. The fire reignites because it hasn't had time to cool off. We've seen burns because of that, and we've seen fire spread because of that. So just cover it, turn the heat off, and leave it. The last thing, we want to make sure people don't use water on a grease fire. So this is a video that shows just how violently water and burning oil can react when mixed. So,
Okay, for those of you who are watching, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I
okay,
don't think I clicked on the appropriate. Hang on, give me just a minute here.
awesome. So we're going to show you a video that we shot a couple of years ago. We got a couple of videos in the cooking section to show you just how dangerous certain things in the kitchen are. But this is what happens if you mix water and burning oil from a grease fire. So I'll just play it here. This is me. I'm actually pouring.
It's you?
Yeah, it's me. I've got a stick with a cup of water attached, and I'm just pouring it on now. And this is just how violently that water and oil react with each other when you throw it on. So obviously you can see the flame spreading throughout the kitchen. If you were standing in front, you could experience some significant burn injuries.
Definite loss of eyebrows.
Yeah, for sure. So we want to avoid water. And we get asked this question a lot. So it's, for some people it's common knowledge, but for many people, they think that pouring water is a good option. They think throwing it in the sink is a good option. And when I talked about my mom before, that's she had a pan of burning butter, and she was on the phone, and then she got back, and there was a little bit of fire and lots of black smoke. So she decided she was going to throw it outside, and she opened the sliding door in the kitchen, and that's why I mentioned as she opened the door and just about to throw it, the draft blew the curtains in the way, and she wound up throwing the hot, all the contents of the pan onto the curtains, and the curtains caught fire. So that's why I'm very aware of the curtains. But yeah.
Is this the same principle as putting a frozen turkey into a deep fryer?
Yes, and glad you asked that. We have a video of that coming up in a moment.
Sorry,
No,
ruined the surprise.
No, not at all.
Heather is
It's a
on.
perfect segue.
You're
It's a perfect
on
segue.
top of the game.
Yeah.
So before we get to the turkey, we want to keep that for last in the kitchen section because we know you asked. When we talk about fire in the oven, same thing. If there's a fire in the oven, we want to make sure that you keep it closed and just turn off the heat. Give it ample time to cool off. Don't open the door, because opening the door would reintroduce that oxygen, would feed it, would get bigger. So just keep the door closed. Turn off the heat source. If you have to cut the breaker, you can do that as well. Give it lots of time to cool off so that it doesn't reignite. If the fire is spreading outside of the oven, just get out of the house and call 911 right away, and we'll come and we'll make sure everything's fine. Obviously, we'll extinguish the fire if need be, but if you can't turn it off, just get out and call the fire department. So
Just want to add a little bit more to that, Randy. If anyone's over the holidays, if you're hosting and cooking for a lot more people, and you're hosting and you're also cooking, make sure someone's always watching what's on the stove. If you have something in the oven, like something like a turkey or any kind of roast, making sure someone's checking on it every so often and not allowing it to dry out, because if it does catch on fire, it does kind of ruin the whole event if all the food burns. So just make sure you're always paying attention to what's in there, checking on it regularly, so you can enjoy the holidays.
yeah, no, that's a great point, Alex. Making sure that the turkey's moist so the roast is good, because no one wants to eat some dry meat. The National Lampoon's Christmas turkey. Yeah,
That's true too.
absolutely, and butter. So here's the infamous turkey fryer. So if you're deep frying a turkey, we know a lot of people use that. In fact, this week is also U.S. Thanksgiving. So if any of you are American joining us and celebrating Thanksgiving this week, this is also a reminder. Make sure that your turkey is fully defrosted before you throw it in a deep fryer. Make sure you pat it dry before you drop it in. If if you throw a frozen turkey in a deep fryer, it can be disastrous. And here's our video to show.
That's both of us in the video too.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the first time we've actually, I think we've used this one. Eh? I mean, I don't use it too often. Is on request.
By request. Yeah.
It's going.
Oh yeah, it is in slow mo.
We normally move a little faster than that, so only slightly.
So yeah, it is in slow mo. And again, I apologize. This is the first time we use it. I just pulled it off my phone today, but it will go. And Alex and I are just discussing, you know, what we're gonna have for lunch here once we burn the turkey. And
You guys take bets on how high the flames were going to go?
we didn't take bus, but we weren't sure that we didn't. I didn't realize how high it was going to go. So you're going to see it once I get it in there. But it did take a little bit of accuracy. I was holding this heavy turkey on a stick, and there's a hook, and I was really worried that the turkey was going to fall off here and knock everything over. There was concern for my safety. So Alex is backing me up there. He's making sure that I'm doing it properly, and I'm going it very gently. I'm narrating this very slow descent. This turkey. Now it's going in. We'll see what happens here. I don't remember what I do. I'm telling you. I just
back up. We back up.
Yeah, we definitely back up. The stick was quite long. It was just balancing the heavy turkey on it. There we go. You can see the oil spilling over onto the ground. Yeah, that's.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite a significant fireball. And we see these videos appear every year, like on social media, and you know.
A little bit. Our health and safety division had some questions for us afterwards, so we actually had them clear it all before we started. But in the future, we would use a longer hose just for that reason.
Absolutely. But it is wrapped, and yeah, no, it as you saw there was quite a significant fireball it made. And again, going to social media, when you think about all these videos that we see out there, many people do this, but they're not nearly as protected or as careful as we are. No, I don't know if there was I think it just inserted twice.
Did that, and if somebody does it in their backyard and then they've got a grass fire, hose or no hose? Oh, I asked a hard
That's a
one.
good question.
That is a good question.
I think, you know, if something like that happens, we'd want people just to like get themselves to safety, call 911.
Start hosing down the neighbors' houses?
Yeah, it's get yourself to safety and call 911 as soon as possible. Our trucks carry some different equipment. So if that fire has spread and there's that oil mixed into it, we have all the equipment to put it out. We don't want people putting themselves at risk or adding potentially more water and bigger hazards. So just get yourself to safety, call 911.
Yeah, and again, I think if that's happening at someone's house, you're calling 911 right away, because most people, like I was alluding to, aren't dressed in fire gear.
Mm-hmm.
They're not.
Like a big long stick.
Yeah, they're not using. They're right there, and definitely would be cause for panic for sure, and cause for calling the fire department and all hands on deck to help out in that situation for sure.
Just remembering our take-home message is make sure you completely defrost your turkey before you put it in the a deep fryer, and then even when you're cooking it, it's going to be better if you defrost it completely. So just follow those recommendations.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll move on to tree and other decorative vegetation. When we talk about selecting and placing and lighting them, we want to just make sure that you're safe. Christmas tree fire causes. The number one cause of Christmas tree fires is lighting. Some of them intentional heating, but lighting would be the most common cause. You can see wiring is also in there.
I have questions when you guys are done this section.
Okay. We may have answers. So here is Christmas tree fire. There's a reason why we want to make sure that people are decorating them properly. Christmas trees, especially obviously the real ones, can get very dry if we don't water them properly. And this is how quickly a fire can spread. This one's not in slow motion. It'll take off. So this is the underwriter. Oh. So this is the underwriter's laboratory, and they do experiments on fire and fire science. see the smoke coming down. Fire spread happens very quickly.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
So tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep.
Yeah, so that went in a minute completely. Blackout, fire, very dangerous conditions there. We have another video here. Does the sound work on this one? Okay, play this video.
During the holiday season, the risk of fire increases as we
Sound
fill our home with decorations.
All right, can everybody hear it? I can, but I want to make sure you guys can. Just let me know in the chat if you can't.
2 inches from the base of the trunk. This will allow the tree to absorb water better. Fill the base with water and check it daily. This will keep the tree hydrated and reduce the risk of your tree catching on fire. Make sure your tree is at least 3 feet away from any heat source like fireplaces, radiators, candles, heat vents, or lights. And also make sure that your tree is not blocking any exits. By the way, we're actually in a fire demonstration prop that we've built to show you why you should keep your tree watered. We've decorated the living room for the holidays, and we have a tree that hasn't been watered as much as it should have. And we're going to light this tree on fire and show you just how dangerous it can be if you neglect your Christmas tree. When it comes to lighting your Christmas tree, use lights that have a label of an independent testing laboratory. Some lights are only for indoor or outdoor use. And it's important to inspect strings of lights before you use them and replace any that are worn or have broken cords or loose bulb connections. And make sure to read manufacturer's instructions for the number of light strands that you can safely connect together. Whether it's the lights for your tree or another power-driven decorative item, do not overload extension cords. When you leave home or go to bed, always turn off your Christmas tree lights and extinguish lit candles when you leave the room. And be sure to dispose of the tree soon after Christmas. Dried out trees are a fire risk and should not be left in the home or garage or placed outside against the home. Fresh cut trees, even if watered daily, will dry out in about 4 weeks and should be taken down. Last but not least, we want you to remember to check your smoke alarms, review and even practice your fire escape plans with your guests, and always remember to close before you doze.
All right, so yeah, just a little recap on the trees. When we're talking about Christmas tree safety, those natural cut trees can account for an average of 150 fires per year. Want to make sure that you're using decorations that are trees. If you have an artificial tree that's heat resistive, if you're using those decorations, it's safer practice to use the newer lighting strips that have the LED lights that are cooler than the old incandescent bulbs. I know my mom still has the old ones that I try and get her out of the habit of, because obviously, especially with the natural trees, as they get drier towards January and we're watering them less, the chances of a fire increase dramatically. And that's where we see a lot of those fires. So just being safe. Again, when we talk about candles and then the trees, that's a dangerous mix. So trying to limit the interaction, and obviously the distance between those two if you do happen to use candles. So again, going back to those safe practices, if you can use battery operated candles and
I'm going to my questions now.
okay, go ahead.
Okay. You said the new LED ones. So I did purchase some on Amazon. They came in, they feel a lot more flimsy. Are they as safe as the ones? Like you can get the Noma ones that look like the old school and they've got like a thicker casing over them. When you get those other ones that look like the little pencil eraser nubbies, it's very thin. And my second question to that is, how dangerous is that for cats or dogs chewing on those? Like, are they going to set it off?
Some great questions, Heather. I think Randy's just looking up some other notes here, but an overarching thing we caution people, anytime you buy something online, companies like Amazon aren't required to sell things that are past the safety standards in Canada. So depending where you buy it from, it may or may not pass those standards. So to your point, anytime you buy the electrical lights like that, if it seems flimsy, looking at the price point you paid for it, there may be a reason for why that is. But you just check all the condition of them yourself, as you plug it in to test it, see the wiring, depending how you decorate your tree or any other decorations of keeping it away from the pets. So if the cats or dogs or any other animals, can have access to it and will chew on it, there is definitely that risk. So just make sure you keep the area clear away from the pets. Maybe it's a good talking point. You have guests over and they wonder why your tree's only decorated, up to like 3 feet off the ground. It's going to keep the pets away. But just those are some of the different things you can do. And just to extend on what Randy was talking about with the trees, any other type of vegetation decoration, right? So whether it's a centerpiece on the table or a wreath somewhere else, just check for those if they were fresh at one point. As they dry out, that becomes that hazard. So keeping the lights around any type of those decorations clear. And to your question there, all the, checking all the conditions of those, the heat that comes off of them. But generally, you buy something off the shelf in the stores in the city, those are required to pass all the safety standards. So when they sell them commercially, but when you buy online, there's not a regulation on it. So just make sure you do your due diligence as you're checking on those items that you buy.
Yeah, and I was looking through the slides, and I don't have it in this slide deck, but the Canadian Standards Association symbol, you'll see those in the back of packaging. Underwriters Laboratories, who actually did the Christmas tree video that you saw. So they basically do tests on consumer products to ensure that they meet the safety standards that we use in North America. And I believe that Canada and US are very similar in terms. So the CSA or the Underwriters Laboratories usually usually have a very similar designation, but you'll find those in the back of packaging for consumer electronic products. As Alex mentioned, a lot of things that are coming in now from Amazon don't pass those safety standards, and so that's the caution. It's hard for us to be able to know what every product is out there, but in general, the strands with the LED lights would be considered safer than the older incandescent bulbs that produce a ton of heat. As for the animals chewing on it, obviously, if they're chewing on electrical cord, it could present a danger. I see it with my girlfriend's puppy that she likes to chew on the iPhone cord. So we're constantly monitoring that situation. For sure.
Okay, can we go to the power bars? How many plugs can you actually put into a power bar? Old school light bulbs and new school light bulbs.
Okay, so for power bars, I actually did a little bit of research on this last week. You have to get what your power bar is rated for, and then let's say it's, I believe, 1500 watts. Then the number and the power, I guess, drawn from each of the objects plugged in can't exceed that. So a general rule of thumb is don't exceed the number of slots. Like some people will add an extender to a power bar, and that's where it becomes dangerous. Yeah,
Definitely not after today.
not after today. But the general rule of thumb is that the power draw of all the objects on cannot exceed the limitation of the power strip that you're using. Some are obviously rated for higher, and that's probably where the price point is going to come in. But again, even with power bars, you want to make sure you have one that has a surge protecting function. And a surge protection is not necessarily to prevent a fire. It's actually to prevent, like, let's say you have your computer plugged in, and if a power surge occurs, it won't destroy your computer and all the data that you have on it. You want to make sure you have one that can cut out in case it overheats. So that's with the power strips. And again, we want to make sure those are plugged directly into the wall because they can overload if there are too many items plugged in or they exceed the standard for the strip.
So don't plug in a power bar to the top one and the bottom one going in two different directions, or are we safe to?
No, that would be safe. So long, again, you're making sure that you have a power bar with a surge protection function or a cutoff function. But it's more when people start plugging more things into the power bars than what they can do. You know, you see that a lot behind people's televisions where they have, any number of different components, and they might have one plug there and they say, well, instead of adding another one, we'll just add 4 things to that one slot. And then they make, go from six slot power strip to a 10 slot power strip, right? Because they might be using the other outlet for something else. You see that also in homes where people have exotic pets, lizards and snakes that have appliances that produce a lot of heat. And that's really where you come into the danger, is when you have appliances that produce heat. They draw a lot more power, and therefore the electricity, as the resistance flows through the wires, can create that resistance, which produces heat like friction, and it can cause a fire.
Yeah, so just building off of that, we covered a lot of our common fire hazards around the holidays and some other safety messages around our space heaters. But another way to think of it, going back to the power bars, is you don't want to have 2 heat producing things that are in the same power bar, right? That as Randy said, with the calculation of what it's rated for, if you don't know all the different exact numbers, but if you plug like a space heater in and say your coffee machine into the same one, it's going to likely exceed it. So just be mindful of what devices you have plugged in. As we're getting into the cooler temperatures, if you do have a space heater in your home, a good practice is to make sure, one, it's a newer model that has an automatic shut off. So if you do have the pets that do knock it over, it's going to turn off automatically. Set it on a timer. It's a lot safer practice. You don't forget that it's on. Space heaters are just meant to heat up the air in the room. So it's not meant to dry anything. So don't use it to try and dry your clothes. Put that too close. We've seen fires start because it's too close to the flammable materials. And back to, Randy's caution about curtains. Also make sure that those space heaters are away from the curtains. Any type of blankets or sheets. You can see in this picture, about that 3 feet or at least 1 meter. So give it space is a simple message to remember. Give space heaters space. And plug those directly into the wall. So much like, as I said at the beginning, we don't want to plug it into a power bar and have other things that exceed it. You don't want to plug it into another extension cord. So every way you can, plug it directly into the wall outlet. And as well, this, as you already asked the question, Heather, just as a picture to reiterate that, of not adding too many things, or, we have a lot more electronic devices in our home now and appliances. So you don't want to keep adding to the power bars. You want to use them directly to the wall outlets. If you do have a power bar, not exceeding it, like we said. Paying attention as well for the vintage decorations that we have in our home. So understanding a lot of people will do the, hand-me-down multiple generations, but just make sure it's still in good quality, that it's still appropriate to use, and, pay attention if it does heat up. So if you feel a ton of heat coming off of this, or in this picture, you see it's plugged in outside and all the snow around it's melting, it's probably too hot. So make sure you look for those different signs. Further to some of our electronic pieces is all the electronic devices we have in our home. So making sure when we're doing safe charging practices. So imagine most people would have, a mobile phone of some kind, tablets, laptops, anything along those lines. When you plug them in and charge them up, make sure you leave it on a hard, flat surface so there's air to kind of breathe around it. You can see in this picture here, this was in the town of Rimbey, Alberta. I believe it was a 12-year-old had their iPhone charging. You can still see the plug is plugged in, or it's still plugged in, and they left it on their mattress. So I don't know if anyone's ever picked up the device while they're charging it. You can actually feel that there's a lot of heat coming off of it while it's charging up. And definitely as devices age, there's that increased, off-putting of heat. That heat got trapped by all the soft materials on the mattress, which led to this fire. So that fuel load is all around it, and with that heat source of the phone. So make sure, again, when we charge our devices, put it on our hard flat surface, so we can avoid any of these type of fires. Okay, and just round out some other safety messages. Smoking, make sure you do it outside. If you do choose to smoke at all, there's no real safe way to smoke inside. So make sure you're outside, and then properly dispose of all those smoking materials. So you can see this picture, not using planters or pots. Definitely, as you have the dirt or fertilizer in there, it's another fuel source, can spread that fire. So make sure they're properly extinguished in a proper ashtray, completely extinguished with sand or water, just so that there's no chance of that starting up again. And fireplaces, so more seasonal pieces, and just ties into our earlier messaging around the decorations. So if you do have a fireplace at home, be mindful of where everything is. You can see in this picture, there's a lot of extra decorations. If there's real candles around there, following the customs of hanging stockings, which is like, it's a flammable material hanging above your fireplace. So move those out of the way if you are choosing to use the fireplace. You may also consider putting up a screen. So if you have pets or little ones that might get too close, you want to keep them at least a meter away so they don't get inadvertently burned. And nothing can fall into the fire. And if you do have a wood burning fireplace, making sure the chimney is properly maintained and it's swept out so that you don't get an accumulation of carbon monoxide in the home, which can be a risk if there's any problems with the chimney or the flue that's up there. So make sure you get that inspected at least once a year if you frequently use your fireplace. If you don't use it a lot, you can maybe stretch that window a little bit longer in terms of when you get inspected, but do make sure that you take care of that properly and have a way to extinguish that fire in case it gets too big or you throw too many logs in there.
Can you use a fire extinguisher on your fireplace?
If you do have one, generally, all our messaging around fire extinguishers, you have to know what's on fire and the extinguisher is properly rated for that. So if you do have the proper type of extinguisher, then generally for most fireplaces, it could be appropriate to use there. But the other part we say, if you're at all unsure about the fire and it's spreading, you saw how quickly those other videos that we showed you with the trees, the fire is actively growing bigger, just get yourself out. If it's still contained within the fireplace, but it seems to get, bigger than you expected and you need to knock it down, you might make that choice. But again, if you're not sure, just get out. Making sure as well that, any children, we don't want them trying to use an extinguisher. So if you have any young kids at home, just say roughly 12 and under, again, depending on the kids, but generally, we always want the kids to evacuate first and not try to put themselves at risk by trying to use a fire extinguisher or any other way to put out a fire. Yeah.
And then our final message for prevention. Again, we talked about prevention. We'll talk about detection, evacuation. But one of the final preventative measures to keep you safe is actually a proactive measure, and that's making sure we close our doors before we go to bed at night. Also, good idea to I don't know why that switched to close your pets off at night. So again, if there is a fire and you had to evacuate, having the doors closed can keep the smoke out. Keeping that smoke out can give you more time to react in case of a fire, when the smoke alarms go off. And if you do have pets in the home, if their doors are closed, it's safer for them. We want to make sure that people understand that the most dangerous thing to human beings in a house fire is the smoke, is the toxic gases and the poisons that are connected with burning materials from furniture to wall coverings. And that is what, unfortunately, when we go to tragic events in house fires, it's because the combination that people have inhaled those toxic gases and possibly didn't have adequately working smoke alarms, which is what we'll talk about next. So making sure you keep the doors closed is part of the equation in the prevention side to keep you and your family safe. So as a recap, making sure we're safe in the kitchen, which is always, one of the top fire causes. Making sure we're not leaving cooking unattended would be the number one fire safety message. With our decorations, it's trying to move away from the candle burning type of decorations. And if we do have those, don't leave them unattended or near anything that can burn. Making sure we're watering our natural trees and disposing of them, at a good time so that they're not so dry. And then just making sure we're safe with our space heaters and electrical devices in the home. Alex, do you want to talk about the detection devices or some
Yes,
questions?
A quick question going back to candles. I put it in the email. If you've got family members coming over that are on oxygen, what does, like, if you've got a candle burning in the bathroom upstairs, or if they've got an O2 tank, or if they've got one of those ones that pulls it out of the air, um, how dangerous is that? How much O2 is going into the system?
Great question with that. So, I mean, recapping basic fire science of, like, you have a heat source, you have oxygen mixing with a fuel source, it sustains combustion. So the oxygen inside the tanks are 100% pure oxygen and it's pressurized. So you want to keep those away from any open flames. If you have a candle upstairs and, you know, someone else is somewhere else in the house, that oxygen is just flowing through whatever they need to breathe in. But you want to just keep them out, like, easy way to think of it, just keep them in different rooms. If you have any oxygen tanks, keep that away from the open flames. That goes to as well with smoking, that there's zero safe way to smoke with an oxygen tank. So having that shut off and completely remove, if someone's still smoking and is on medical oxygen, shut that off, have them separate from it. They smoke, come back, put the oxygen back on separately, but just keep them as far apart as you can for that.
Yeah, and I would think that's a great question because it's one that kind of never had to approach before. A lot of times in our line of service, we deal with smoking, we deal with seniors, and we deal with oxygen use, and so it's definitely where we see the highest risk. But obviously, the candle use with open flame near oxygen could present a significant hazard as well. So, my initial thought would be to avoid the use of candles, especially if you have someone that's visiting your home under medical oxygen or your home as well. So, oxygen, pressurized oxygen and open flame definitely don't mix. And we definitely want to advise against that. We've had a fire fatality, I think it's 2 years ago now, with medical oxygen and someone who was smoking in town. It's a higher a risk in a higher hazard in the United States. There's a lot of messaging surrounding those types of fires and tragedies in the U.S. I believe there's a higher percentage of people on medical oxygen, but it doesn't mean that we can't be proactive in Canada to make sure that we're ahead of the curve in keeping people safe. Yeah.
It looks like someone's got their hand raised, Heather. I don't know how you want to manage asking questions.
Well, you know what? If you can put that into the chat, we would be happy to answer that question for you.
Right, so I'm going to move on. So the person with their hand up, if you just type it into the chat, then we can answer it when we can. And then if you have any trouble putting that in the chat, we should have time to take it at the very end, I think. All right, so just building off of the prevention messaging, we go into our second major category, which is detection devices. So looking at the things we have in our home to keep us safe. So in this picture here, you can see you need to have working smoke alarms. So we're going to go through the testing protocols and all those different pieces. But you should have one on every level of the home, outside sleeping areas and inside bedrooms. So understanding that some people have older homes, they may not have had the wiring to have them inside a building or inside their bedrooms. But every home that's built after 2015, so all new builds will have smoke alarms as a requirement built inside the bedrooms. Anyone doing renovations, as you bring it up to code, that's a good practice to do as well. I'll talk more about the different types of smoke alarms, but there are other battery powered ones that can interconnect together. And that's really the highlight we're looking for here, that you have interconnected smoke alarms. And what that means is that if you have a fire in one area of the home, the smoke alarm closest to it will activate. When they're interconnected, then all the smoke alarms activate. So thinking back to those videos we watched, we saw how quickly, I think Heather, you pointed out in just under a minute, how quickly that fire grew, that you can have very little time. So if you had a fire in another area of your home and it completely caught everything on fire, flashed over, smoke all the way down to the floor, that you'd want to have as much advance notice as possible. So interconnected smoke alarms are what we're looking for is what you should have. So looking at this picture, you can see the 5 check marks. So it covers all the spots we talked about there. So with our smoke alarms, right, checking the different power sources. So we have hardwired alarms, which you can see in this picture, it has the has the wires that stick out of the back of the alarm, and that ties into your home electrical. The big key thing here is that red wire is what connects it to all the other alarms. So when you're doing your testing on your alarms and you press the button, you should hear every single alarm come on if they are interconnected. If you press the test button and only the alarm that you're pressing the button on activates, that means your system is not interconnected. You can see in this picture as well. So commonly with hardwired alarms, there also is a battery backup. So that on this one is a front load battery. So you can see that one's accessible without taking the alarm off the ceiling. Other ones you may have to, when you take it off the ceiling, there's a battery compartment on the back. So just make sure you're aware of what type of battery backup your system has. If it does have one, removable batteries. A lot of the newer ones will have 10-year batteries built into them.
Or do you just throw that one out?
Great questions. What we've more commonly seen is like when the manufacturer mass produces all their alarms, they may produce a hardwired one that has a compartment on the back, but there's actually no battery in it. So it depends on your alarm. So make sure you just double check it. If you're not sure, then you can scrape that sticker off, but good chance if they have the sticker over top of it is because there's no actual connection for the battery, even though the compartment is like the casing was built for it. But then with our alarms, we replace them every 10 years. So if yours is close to being replaced, then just replace it. And then in this picture as well, combination alarms are which combine both a smoke and carbon monoxide alarm. So I'm going to talk about both here, but we just wanted to go through the different power sources. There are some newer style alarms that are battery powered that are interconnected. So they work, I believe, on a radio signal to allow them to connect together. Some people have asked us, some models if it was on the Wi-Fi, because if your power goes out, the Wi-Fi is not going to work. So it doesn't work for your smoke alarm. So that's where it uses the battery or the radio signal to connect them together. And you can have I can't remember if you knew how many we can connect together, but it's quite a few.
Yeah, I think it's
quite a few.
I think it's enough to cover a residential home. Yeah.
So just a couple assistive alerting devices. So if as people age or for different reasons, if anyone experiences a hearing loss, our traditional smoke alarms just work on that audible beeping signal, right? So it's called the T3 pattern. You hear 3 beeps, pause 3 beeps, and just continuously repeats that pattern. So we can see in this picture here, some of these assistive alerting devices will alert in other ways. So as a smoke alarm activates, this base unit reacts to that sound effect and will activate a strobe light, maybe a message board. And you can see as well, there's that little puck. It's called a bed shaker, and it would go underneath the mattress or pillow, and it pulsates and vibrates much like our phone does when you put it on silent or on vibrate. And it would be the same as, just to wake somebody up. So just make sure whatever device you have is going to alert you and wake you up when you're sleeping. That's most critical. So if again, yes, no, yeah, separate. Yes, no. So that would be completely keep those separate, but just the pulsating puck would feel similar to your phone, but do not put your phone underneath your pillow to alert you that way. You might need to look for one of these devices separately from that. And then other considerations as well is strobe smoke alarms. So if you own your own home and you want to replace your smoke alarms with the strobe alarm, so if you have trouble hearing it or you wear hearing aids or have a cochlear implant, and when you go to sleep at night, you take those different pieces out, so then you may not hear the alarm. The strobe alarm is a good consideration because you'll get that visible flash as well. And this would just go the same spot as your regular smoke alarm in your home. So these are just different considerations. Again, if you can't hear the alarm for any reason, being aware as well that if you have guests coming to your home and you have people with mixed hearing abilities, you still need to maintain your regular smoke alarm system. You may need to consider these other ones. That assistive alerting device from a couple pictures ago is just kind of handy because that's something that somebody can take with them and will work with any smoke alarm that's in another home, rather than something like this picture, the strobe light. That's where if you own your own home, it's only going to work in your own home. You're not going to go disconnect the smoke alarm and take it with you and install it in someone else's house. So again, just consider what you need. Going through some of our standard messaging, and it's always important to reinforce this, is making sure to have a working smoke alarm, you need to press the test button on each alarm every single month. For some, I think, one of the programs we do is helping older adults and seniors that aren't able to climb up a ladder and don't have someone that can help them. They can contact 311 and a member of our team. So you have a 50% chance it's Randy or I or the rest of our team that will come to your home. But I remember one gentleman who his New Year's Day tradition is to check his smoke alarm. So, he does that January 1st. So the first of every month is when he chose to do it. So whatever works for you, just make sure you pick a day, press those buttons. If you have any trouble doing it yourself, then you can contact 311 and have one of us come out and help you out. Alternatively, if you have like a broomstick or a mop handle, something like that you can reach the smoke alarm, just make sure you press that test button once a month to make sure it is working. And then further to that is if you have the removable batteries we talked about, whether it's on the front or the back, then change those at least once a year. Again, if you can't climb up that ladder, contact us. We'll be able to come help you out with that. And then there are the alarms that have a built-in battery that lasts for 10 years. So those generally, just a little bit lower maintenance for everybody to do. You don't have to worry about the batteries. If you ever hear a chirping sound, so usually most of us hear this in the middle of the night, you're sleeping, it's quiet, you hear a little chirp, you wonder if there's a bird in your house, and you can't figure it out. And then about a minute later, it happens again. That is the signal that there's something wrong with your smoke alarm. So if you do have removable batteries, change those batteries. If it still does that, then you need to replace the smoke alarm. And again, if you don't have access, can't get up to it, contact 311 and we'll come out and help you out as soon as we can.
Vacuum?
That's a great question too. It's a good idea to vacuum it out, any of the ports. So as you look on these pictures where you see the little spaces, that's where the smoke would go into the alarm. So if there's an accumulation of a lot of dust, sometimes you can get false alarms with it as well. If anyone does any renovation work, say if you're, sanding down your drywall or even painting in the room, you might want to put a cover over your smoke alarm just so that it doesn't accumulate on those sensors and give you false alarms. Yeah, very good practice. And again, it says right on the smoke alarms, but do not paint over the smoke alarms. So paint around them. Don't paint on top of them. We don't want to block anything for the sensors, but the vacuuming is a good practice. About once a year is a good idea. Yep. All right. And then the last of the three main safety messages with smoke alarms is replace them every 10 years. On the side of smoke alarms, there should be a sticker that tell you when to replace it by. Sometimes there's also an installation sticker on it, so just make sure you pay attention to those. If your alarm doesn't have a sticker at all, there's a good chance that it's been more than 10 years. So on the back as well, it'll tell you when it was manufactured. That's a requirement. So just take a look for those and make sure we are replacing them regularly or the 10 years so that you do have the working systems and that will alert you in case of an emergency in your home. I was going to talk briefly about carbon monoxide alarms. So we talked about the fireplace. That's a potential source of it. If there's any problems with your furnace, that's another consideration. You don't want to be, if you're not qualified to do anything with your furnace, make sure you call a specialist to do any repairs if you need that sort of thing. Anyone that has a attached garage, make sure, as we're getting into the colder months, you start your car, pull it outside. If you got to sit in it and you're going to let it warm up outside, do that outside of your garage. If you have a running car too long inside of a garage or with a closed door, you can accumulate a lot of those toxic fumes and the carbon monoxide, which is a big, big risk. So this picture just goes through a couple of those examples like I talked about. You want to make sure we have a carbon monoxide alarm on each level of the home. It should be outside of the sleeping area, so that way it's going to alert us, much like our smoke alarms do. You just don't need as many of them in your home, but you want to have one on each level so there's any hazard of carbon monoxide, because again, these are odorless, tasteless, poisonous gas. There's no way to know you have it in there unless you have an alarm. If your alarm goes off, make sure you get outside, close the doors, get outside to where it's safe. Call 911. They'll let you know. They'll ask you a bunch of questions. So if it's not an emergency, we'll still send a fire truck. We have gas monitors and sensors that will come and check for the levels and figure out the source. Sometimes people will open up all their windows and then we can't, it's a lot harder for us to find the source of it. So again, just get outside, close the window or close the door, get outside. Definitely let people know, like when you call 911, your alarm's going off, get outside and people are feeling lightheaded or dizzy or feeling ill at all. That's a big risk. That means that people might have been inhaling that carbon monoxide for a while. So if you're not feeling well and the alarm is going off, when you get outside, call 911. We will send everybody lights and sirens, send the ambulances to come and check you out as well, because that's an elevated risk as well.
No, we're running out of time. We're gonna go past, but if you guys have to go, we're going to have this up on YouTube, so that's okay. So I had a boss once who was telling me they had a propane heater, like a lamp one, in his garage, and they had cracked the door. Ended up he passed out, and they had to fly him to Edmonton to put him in
Chamber.
the hyperbaric chamber. So other things like if you're opening your garage door and you've got bedrooms or people sitting in the rooms above your garage, can it seep through? Or like if you've got a heater in your garage like that that's say propane based, um,
Yeah, so any type of combustion like that of like those propane, like the patio lanterns and all that sort of stuff. Anytime you're burning any type of fuel source, it doesn't burn with 100% completion kind of thing. So carbon monoxide comes off incomplete combustion. So that's one of the byproducts. So accumulating in a small space. So you definitely don't want to use any of those type of appliances indoor that are propane powered. If you look as well, the little like I guess in lieu of an outdoor fire, you could have the propane powered little fire, like outdoor fireplace type of thing. You don't want to use that in an enclosed space as well, so that can accumulate. It can potentially, seep its way through the rest of the house through any of the open vents or anything like that. It might take a while for it to accumulate, but make sure you use those outside. And then further to that, if you have any power tools, so whether it's people have a gas powered, the leaf blowers or the snow blowers type of thing, you don't want to run those inside if because for the same reasons. So do make sure anything that's burning a fuel source, use that outdoors.
And also I'll add with the snowfall we've had this week, make sure that any exhausts from our furnaces, I don't know if you covered that, but any exhausts from our furnaces are free of any blockage and snow that could cause the carbon monoxide to back into the house. That's a common cause of alarms this time of year. And same with cars. If you start your car outside, make sure that the exhaust pipe, the tailpipe, is clear from any snow, especially with the snow banks. And when the scrapers come by and they dump a whole pile of snow in your car, and you're digging out and you're starting the car, make sure that the first thing you clear is the tailpipe, so that it has ample room to exhaust those dangerous fumes. Yeah, no, for sure.
That's another very important piece. Thanks for that, Randy. Because actually, with my work van, similar type of thing of just having it running and then having the back gate open on the van. I actually have for some of our presentations, a carbon monoxide alarm, and just leaving the gate open in the wintertime and having my van running was enough to actually set off the alarms in the back of my van. So just pay attention to that too. Like Randy said, keeping the exhaust clear wherever you're parked. Again, if the snowplow pushed a bunch of snow, you're parked outside, you need to clear that area before you're warming up your vehicle. Yeah. And then just pay attention, if you have the trunk open for a long time with the vehicle running, it can also accumulate and pull that all into your vehicle. So
yeah. So I know we're coming up against time, but we do want to make sure that we talk a little bit about evacuation. So we talk about prevention. We talked about detection with the smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms. We want to make sure that you have a plan to get out and stay out. And depending on where you live, you should have a plan that you draw in practice. This is sort of common, what we teach all populations, to make sure that you have a home escape plan that includes 2 ways out of every room in the house, if possible, and a family meeting spot in front of the home where, when, you call 911 and the fire engine, the ambulances show up, you can give them information as to what's going on inside the house. If there are people in there, if there are pets, any special property, that's what we want to know about. So that meeting spot is crucial. So again, that home escape plan should have 2 ways out of every room if possible, a meeting place, and you want to practice this twice a year. Again, 2 ways out being a door would be the quickest, fastest way out, and a window would be the next way out. Making sure that you plan, again, know those 2 ways out, make sure windows and doors open easily. If you have bars over your windows, make sure that you can open them from the inside. And then if that alarm sounds, again, we talked about having those working smoke alarms, have a plan to get outside and stay out. If you live in a multi-residential building, learn the escape plan. know where your fire exits are, any crossover floors if you live in a very tall building, the muster points for the building. Every building has sort of a different fire plan, so it would be hard for us, just like any residential home is different, and every family is different. So making sure that you understand your family dynamics and you understand the dynamics of the building you're in. But again, some of the general things we'd like you to know is those fire exits, crossover floors, muster points. Do not use the elevator in a multi-residential building. And if you have to, if you can't get down the stairs, then have a plan for sheltering in place. So shelter in place means close as many doors between you and the fire, or you and the front entrance to your apartment, because you might not necessarily know where the fire is. Place any towels under the door to prevent that smoke from coming in, and stay near a window, and call 911. Making sure that the room that you shelter in place in, you have your appropriate medications, mobility devices, any hearing aids, anything that you would need, that if you had to stay in a room for a little bit of time and communicate with 911. So make sure you call 911 and you stay on the line with them to let them know what's going on as we attend the incident. That information comes to us through our CAD system, and you providing as much information as possible from a safe location within your building. So again, as much as possible, we'd like you to get out, stay out, and call 911. But of course, there are situations like we talked with people with limited mobility that they have to make a plan to shelter in place. Again, when you're calling 911, just quickly, it's the number that we call in Calgary for police, fire, and the medical emergency. You can call it even from your cell phone. You can call it from someone else's phone. So if you don't have your phone nearby and you're outside and there's a phone, we just show this to show you that there is an emergency function on all the phones, where when you press that emergency button, you can still dial 911. I think it actually works on even phones that are no longer in service. I believe there was a story about that, that some kids called 911 on a phone, and because of the GPS locator, it's still placed the call through. But yeah, that's general fire safety for the holidays. Again, we talked about those prevention pieces, the detection and evacuation, making sure all those work in conjunction with your specific situation to keep you safe. So appreciate the time. And Heather, I don't know if there are any questions.
I have one more question.
Sure.
So you're in a building, multi-family dwelling or apartment building or what have you, and you've got pets. Now, on a house, typically you can put the sticker on the outside so that you guys know if there's dogs or cats or chinchillas in the house. Where's the best place to put that for an apartment building?
I would personally, I would put it on the door of the building. But again, same with the animals. If you're not able to get all the animals out, or we don't want people taking time to look for them, closing as many doors as possible between them and the exterior of the building will be a safe practice. Many of the buildings, when we talk about multi-residential buildings, are sprinklered. Many are concrete construction that, concrete limits the fire spread. Usually in those types of buildings, a fire would be a room and contents fire, and provided all the doors are closed, it would keep the smoke out. So yeah, just making sure the same things that we said, good practice to have those doors closed. So if you do have to leave in the middle of the night, your animal is safe in the room. But I think as far as the stickers on the door of the apartment would be good practice.
Okay, last question. If you have cats, some people, they run, but they'll open a window, push the screen out so that the cat can escape. Bad or okay?
Well, again, when we tell people to shelter in place, we tell them to get near a window to keep the window open, so long as the fire floor is not below that building and the smoke can rise into the apartment. But if you were to shelter in place, we'd advise you to get next to the window and make sure you can make lots of noise. Let us know you're there. But again, if smoke is rising because it's right below, then we would advise you to close that that window. So I don't see that as a terrible thing, opening the window for the cat.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing.